Good morning, church family. Welcome back to the Daily Walk today. And we are in 2 Kings 4 through 8. And sorry about some of the technical issues if you were watching the service last night. Oh my goodness, it was difficult, but we got most of it done. I think you missed about 2 or 3 minutes of the sermon at the end there. So didn't miss a whole lot, but I'm glad that we could still use these mediums, but I would much rather be in person today. But let's get into our Bibles and 2 Kings 4 through 8. And Kevin mentioned over on the church website that these are some exciting 4 days in front of us, and that is so true. And thinking about Easter, and I love the emotional roller coaster that it kind of is as you during these days think about the crucifixion of Christ, and it's dark and it's discouraging in those senses, very emotional. And then here comes Sunday, and we get to celebrate the resurrection of Christ. So I'm excited to do that with you guys through our live stream services. And I see Sherry Pierce is over here as well. Good morning, Sherry. Glad to have you here. Hi, Regina, Nancy, and Joy, and everybody. So let's get into our Bibles today and making sure all of our spots are working. Looks like our Facebook is up and our church website's up. So that's good. We're where we need to be. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get into the Bible this morning and learning about the ministry of Elisha. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondmen. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? And tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house, save a pot of oil. Then he said, Go, borrow thee vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shalt pour out into all those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. So she went from him, and shut the door upon her and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, Bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And the oil stayed. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go, sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. And she said unto her husband, Behold now, I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and he returned into the chamber, and lay there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, Call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, Say now unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king, or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. And he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily, she hath no child, and her husband is old. And he said, Call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. And he said, About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, Nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid. And the woman conceived, and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, My head, my head. And he said to the lad, Carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and then died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. And she called unto her husband, and said, Send me, I pray thee, one of the young men, and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God, and come again. And he said, Wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, It shall be well. Then she saddled an ass, and said to her servant, Drive, go forward. Slack not thy riding from me, except I bid thee. So she went and came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, Is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, It is well. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her, and the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. Then she said, Did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, Gird up thy loins, and take my staff in thine hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not, and if any salute thee, answer him not again, and lay my staff upon the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he arose and followed her. And Gehazi passed on before them, and laid the staff upon the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, The child is not awaked. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. He went in therefore, and shut the door upon them twain, and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up, and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned, and walked in the house to and fro, and went up, and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi, and said, Call this Shunammite. So he called her, and when she was come in unto him, he said, Take up thy son. Then she went in, and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. And Elisha came again to Gilgal, and there was a dearth in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said unto his servant, Set on the great pot, and seethe pottage for the sons of the prophets. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered thereof wild gourds his lap full, and came and shred them into the pot of pottage, for they knew them not. So they poured out for the men to eat. And it came to pass, as they were eating of the pottage, that they cried out and said, O thou man of God, there is death in the pot, and they could not eat thereof. But he said, Then bring meal. And he cast it into the pot. And he said, Pour out of the people, that they may eat. And there was no harm in the pot. And there came a man from Baal Shalisha, and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and full ears of corn in the husk thereof. And he said, Give unto the people, that they may eat. And his servitor said, What, should I set this before 100 men? He said again, Give the people, that they may eat. For thus saith the Lord, They shall eat, and shall leave thereof. So he set it before them, and they did eat, and left thereof, according to the word of the Lord. Wow, we get 4 very amazing stories today in just that that one chapter. And I'm over here on Facebook. Good morning, Tanya and Charlene and Jerry. Glad you guys are all here. So, man, I love these stories. And the first one about the woman who her sons were going to be basically taken as slaves because she couldn't pay her debt. And Elisha says, Go get some vessels to fill with oil. And she goes and gets as many as she could, and they're all filled with oil miraculously. And so she's able to pay her own debt and live off of the extra oil that was provided for them. That is such a cool story. It's also one of those things. It reminds me, these stories this morning are reminding me of Jesus, right? So Elisha and even Elijah before him were, God empowered them to do some miracles. And a couple of the miracles that they did had to do with making more provision out of little. Like there's a little bit of oil, a little bit of flour, and they're able to miraculously produce way more than what was there. Remember the lady and her cruse of oil just never went empty. She was able to just keep using it, and the flour. And in this case, as many pots as she could bring, that's what filled up. That reminds me of the disciples when Jesus tells them to cast their nets on the other side of the boat, and their nets were so full that they broke. and you almost wish that they had bigger nets so they would be able to bring in more. And for this woman, I almost feel like, man, if she could only get her hands on a few more vessels. But anyways, that's a great story. And then also we get the story of the lady who just was a blessing to Elisha and Gehazi, his servant. And she builds a chamber for the prophet. And does that sound familiar? That is where we get the term prophet's chamber. A lot of churches have, a room or a little apartment or something that they have dedicated for pastors or people in ministry or missionaries to stay in. And often that's called a prophet's chamber. And this is the story from which that concept is from. Okay, I guess I can't comment on everything, but those are some great stories. Now we get to the popular one, chapter 5, Naaman. And a lot of dealings with Syria during this time. Seems like we've been reading about Syria for several days. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by companies, and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said unto her mistress, Would God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, Thus and thus said the maid that is of the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, Go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of raiment. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Now when this letter is come unto thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes, and said, Am I God, to kill and to make alive, that this man doth send unto me to recover a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. I would probably be offended if somebody said, Hey, if you could just heal us of this disease, that'd be great. You would think that they were mocking you or something, and that's definitely what the king of Israel thought. And he thought, okay, these are fighting words. He's trying to pick a fight with me, and I'm not going to back down. So literally, a war is is possible just because this guy wants to be healed from his leprosy. Verse 8, And it was so, when Elisha the man of God had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth, and went away, and said, Behold, I thought, he will surely come out to me, and stand, and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place, and recover the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. Oh, man. And his servants came near, and spake unto him, and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldest thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he saith to thee, Wash and be clean? Then went he down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came and stood before him. And he said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. And Naaman said, Shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules, burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord. In this thing the Lord pardon thy servant, that when my master goeth into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, when I bow down myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon thy servant in this thing. And he said unto him, Go in peace. So he departed from him a little way. If I read that right, it seems like Naaman has decided that Jehovah is going to be his God, but he is a man under authority. And so when he goes to be with his master, who is going to be worshiping false gods, and it would endanger his life, or it would just be what he's supposed to do, he's asking for a pardon when he attends that worship ceremony, if you will. So, okay, verse 19. And he said unto him, Go in peace. So he departed from him a little way. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, Behold, my master has spared Naaman this Syrian, is not receiving at his hands that which he brought. But, as the Lord liveth, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. So Gehazi followed after Naaman, and when Naaman saw him running after him, he lighted down from the chariot to meet him, and said, Is all well? And he said, All is well. My master hath sent me, saying, Behold, even now there be come to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments. And Naaman said, Be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 changes of garments, and laid them upon 2 of his servants, and they bare them before him. And when he came to the tower, he took them from their hand, and bestowed them in the house, and he let the men go, and they departed. But he went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said unto him, Whence comest thou, Gehazi? And he said, Thy servant went no whither. And he said unto him, Went not mine heart with thee, when the man turned again from his chariot to meet thee? Is it a time to receive money, and to receive garments, and oliveyards, and vineyards, and sheep, and oxen, and men servants, and maidservants? The leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee, and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper, as white as snow. Wow, that's crazy, huh? Gehazi, greedy Gehazi. Wow. Chapter 6 here. And looks like the sons of the prophets are ready to build a better dorm, and things don't go great. Chapter 6, verse 1. And the sons of the prophets said unto Elisha, Behold now, the place where we dwell with thee is too strait for us. Let us go, we pray thee, unto Jordan, and take thence every man a beam, and let us make us a place there, where we may dwell. And he answered, Go ye. And one said, Be content, I pray thee, and go with thy servants. And he answered, I will go. So he went with them, and when they came to Jordan, they cut down wood. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water. And he cried and said, Alas, master, for it was borrowed. And the man of God said, Where fell it? And he showed him the place. And he cut down a stick and cast it in thither, and the iron did swim. Oh, cool. Therefore said he, Take it up to thee. And he put out his hand and took it. Then the king of Syria warred against Israel, and took counsel with his servants, saying, In such and such a place shall be my camp. And the man of God sent unto the king of Israel, saying, Beware that thou pass not such a place, for thither the Syrians are come down. This story is really cool, and I hope that we're able to comprehend it. I had to look back just a second to make sure I had my facts straight. Okay, so you've got the king of Syria, the king of Israel, and then you've got the prophet Elisha, and all these 3 are kind of our characters in this story that is coming. And Elisha keeps on foiling the plans of Syria, and so it's kind of funny. Verse 10, And the king of Israel sent to the place which the man of God told him, and warned him of, and saved himself there, not once nor twice. Not once nor twice means, so the prophet from God is given the battle plans of Syria. Syria has no idea. They're making these strategies. We're going to go get Israel. And every time they go, it was a good plan, but, somehow they escape, and it's because God is helping them. Verse 11, Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing. And he called his servants and said unto them, Will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? There's a spy, or there's a traitor here. Verse 12, And one of his servants said, None, my lord, O king, but Elisha the prophet that is in Israel telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber. And he said, Go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. Therefore sent he thither horses and chariots and a great host, and they came by night and compassed the city about. And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, an host compassed the city both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, Alas, my master, how shall we do? And he answered, Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. I just keep on thinking of parallels in the New Testament of, so he's saying that here they are surrounded by an army, chariots, horses, literally surrounded by them. And the servant looks out the window, and, oh no, what are we going to do? And Elisha says, no big deal. Those who are for us are more than those who are against us. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world, is what is coming to my mind right now. Verse 17, and Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. Not the first time chariot of fire has happened. Remember Elijah when he was taken up in a whirlwind and the chariot of fire came and got him? And this is the next time we see chariots of fire, which I think is the name of a movie. Isn't this movie about the missionary Nate Saint and Jim Elliott called Chariots of Fire? I might be wrong on that. Maybe it's Eric Liddell, the Christian athlete. Oh my goodness, now I'm rambling. Sorry. Chariots of Fire, keyword, and there it goes in my head. Verse 18, and when they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto the Lord and said, Smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. And Elisha said unto them, This is not the way, neither is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom ye seek. But he led them to Samaria. Oh no, guys, the prophet lied. This keeps on coming up. Oh, if you're not familiar, we had this discussion. The last chapter of 1 Kings had a lie in it that was okayed by God. And now we've got Elisha, he prays, and then the entire army goes blind. An entire army of men blind. And now he's saying, I'm going to take you. Follow me. This isn't the right place. It was the right place. And then he says, I'm going to take you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria. Okay, I'm just pointing it out. I'm just saying that that's another lie that seems to be okay. I don't know. Verse 20. And it came to pass, when they were come into Samaria, that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men, that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw. And behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. And the king of Israel said unto Elijah, when he saw them, My father, shall I smite them? Shall I smite them? And he answered, Thou shalt not smite them. Wouldest thou smite those whom thou hast taken captive with thy sword and with thy bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink, and go to their master. And he prepared great provision for them, and when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syria came no more into the land of Israel. And it came to pass after this, that Benhadad king of Syria gathered all his host, and went up and besieged Samaria. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it, until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, and the fourth part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. And as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If the Lord do not help thee, whence shall I help thee? Out of the barn floor, or out of the winepress? And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she answered, This woman said unto me, Give thy son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son, and did eat him. And I said unto her on the next day, Give thy son, that we may eat him. And she hath hid her son. And it came to pass, when the king heard the words of the woman, that he rent his clothes, and he passed by upon the wall. And the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth within upon his flesh. Then he said, God do so, and more also to me, if the head of Elisha the son of Shaphat shall stand on him this day. But Elisha sat in his house, and the elders sat with him. And the king sent a man from before him. But ere the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, See ye how this son of a murderer has sent to take away mine head? Look, when the messenger cometh, shut the door, and hold him fast at the door. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him? And while he yet talked with him, behold, the messenger came down unto him, and he said, Behold, this evil is of the Lord. What should I wait for the Lord any longer? That is so we've transitioned in the storyline here. Um, Glendy, that's Eric Liddell. Thank you for letting me know. Jerry, a lie or a war strategy? I think both. I mean, it wasn't true what he said, but I think that it's been a common thread that whenever there is a falsehood told so far, it's always been in context of war, and it's always been in the context of the person being deceived has completely wicked and evil intentions, and the deception was intended to avoid the wicked or evil that was intended by the other. So, yeah, it's an interesting concept. Chariots of Fire, Eric Liddell. I wonder if they, I've never read it or watched it, so I wonder if they play off of this story with Elisha. But, okay. We went from the story of in chapter 6 of you've got the prophets building their new place and the axe head swimming, and then we move into Syria and the king and that deception or whatever happened there. And so that ends, and then it just goes right into another story. And the next story is another time that Syria is troubling Israel, and they've surrounded the city, and it's looking really bad. They've run out of food, they've run out of everything, and maybe after this, if you guys want to cross-reference and read Psalm chapter 46, I think it's Psalm 46. Most people believe that Psalm 46 was written in reference to this story that we're reading right now, how they're surrounded by the people by Syria, and there's no food, and things are getting so desperate that people are literally eating their kids, and it is really, really bad. But Psalm 46 talks about the Lord of hosts is with us, the God of Jacob is our refuge, and there is a river, the streams whereof make glad the city of God. The language of Psalm 46 is basically, it looks desperate and we're surrounded by the enemy, but we have a life source inside, and that life source was God. And so we're going to see how God takes care of them, and Elisha begins in chapter 7. Then Elisha said, Hear ye the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, Tomorrow about this time shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, in the gate of Samaria. That is cool. Okay, so not only is health a concern, people are going to die, but also the economy is collapsing. And remember in chapter 6 that, I don't remember what, they're like selling dove dung. Yeah, okay, verse 25. They're selling donkey heads for 80 pieces of silver. 80 pieces of silver. Okay, that's, what is that? 80 pieces of silver, I think. Jesus was betrayed for 70. And just a chapter ago, right, when Gehazi, Elisha's servant, was willing to lie and deceive the man of God, how many pieces of silver? He asked for 1. Naaman gave him 2. So that gives you a small concept of what value a piece of silver was. And they were so desperate that 80 pieces of silver were paid just to get the head of a donkey. That's how desperate people were. That's pretty bad. And then the 4th part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. Literally buying dove dung for 5 pieces of silver. That's really bad. The economy had collapsed. We'll just say that much. And then Elisha in chapter 7 and verse 1 says, not only are we going to be healthy and fine and safe, we're also going to see the economy rebound and be very healthy very soon. And if you're not already connecting the dots, I'm just saying that there's hope for America. I know that we're concerned about health right now. We're concerned about our economy. And I know that God can take care of us. And so let's not be afraid. Verse 2. Then a Lord on whose hand the king leaned answered the man of God and said, Behold, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, might this thing be? And he said, Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof. This guy is very skeptical, and he's calling the prophet out and saying, liar, this isn't going to happen. Verse 3, And there were 4 leprous men at the entering in of the gate, and they said one to another, Why sit we here until we die? If we say, We will enter into the city, then the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. And if we sit still here, we die also. Now therefore come, and let us fall unto the host of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall live, and if they kill us, we shall but die. And they rose up in the twilight to go unto the camp of the Syrians. And when they were come to the uttermost part of the camp of Syria, behold, there was no man there. For the Lord had made the host of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots and a noise of horses, even the noise of a great host. And they said one to another, Lo, the king of Israel hath hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. Wherefore they arose and fled in the twilight, and left their tents, and their horses and their asses, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life. And when these lepers came to the uttermost part of the camp, they went into one tent, and did eat and drink, and carried thence silver and gold and raiment, and went and hid it. And it came again, and entered into another tent, and carried thence all also, and went and hid it. Oh man, so these leprous guys are like, we're going to die in the city. We're going to die if we go to the Syrians. So we might as well go see if we can, strike a deal with the Syrians. So at least we can have some food and maybe they'll let us live. They get out there and God had already taken care of the Syrians. They had thought that they were under attack and they left all of their stuff and they get out of Dodge. So literally the spoils of war are there for these 4 lepers and they're just having a party. I mean, they're eating and drinking and getting money and getting clothes and stuff. And verse 9, Then they said one to another, We do not well. This day is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. If we tarry till the morning light, some mischief will come upon us. Now therefore come, that we may go and tell the king's household. So they came and called unto the porter of the city, and they told them, saying, We came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no man there, neither voice of man, but horses tied, and asses tied, and the tents as they were. And he called the porters, and they told it to the king's house within. And the king arose in the night, and said unto his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we be hungry. Therefore they gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, When they come out of the city, we shall catch them alive, and get into the city. The king doesn't believe it. He thinks that they are just hiding behind the trees to induce the people to leave the city so they can just go ahead and take care of them. Verse 13, And one of his servants answered and said, Let some take, I pray thee, 5 of the horses that remain, which are left in the city. Behold, they are as the multitude of Israel that are left in it. Behold, I say, they are even as all the multitude of the Israelites that are consumed. And let us send and see. They took therefore 2 chariot horses, and the king sent after the host of the Syrians, saying, Go and see. And they went after them unto Jordan, and lo, all the way was full of garments and vessels, which the Syrians had cast away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. And the people went out and spoiled the tents of the Syrians. So a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. And the king appointed the Lord on whose hand he leaned to have the charge of the gate. And the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died, as the man of God had said, who spake when the king came down to him. And it came to pass, as the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, and a measure of fine flour for a shekel, shall be tomorrow about this time in the gate of Samaria. And that Lord answered the man of God, and said, Now, behold, if the Lord should make windows in heaven, might such a thing be? And he said, Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof. And so it fell out unto him, for the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died. Wow, what a crazy story, huh? These lepers said an important statement in verse 9. They said, We do not well. This day is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. And I've heard that preached. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. This is not about the gospel. This story is not about the fact that we have the riches of Christ and the world around us is dying. But it's not a bad parallel. It's not a bad way to look at it. These men who were doomed for death all of a sudden are not only rescued, they are experiencing great riches and wealth, and they were enjoying that, rightly so. It was a day of celebration, but they recognized that it's not good for them to simply enjoy it themselves, but they ought to share the wealth. They ought to tell the good news to the people who need it the most. And so I wonder, Christian, if we looked at each other in our lives right now, would we have to conclude the same thing that those lepers concluded? We do not well. We're not sharing the gospel with people. We're not sharing the good news that they can have the wealth and riches and security and safety that God has provided for them in Jesus Christ. All right. Chapter 8. Then spake Elisha unto the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise, and go thou and thine household, and sojourn wheresoever thou canst sojourn, for the Lord hath called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years. And the woman arose and did after the saying of the man of God, and she went with her household, and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years. And it came to pass at the 7 years' end that the woman returned out of the land of the Philistines. And she went forth to cry unto the king for her house and for her land. And the king talked with Gehazi the servant of the man of God, saying, Tell me, I pray thee, all the great things that Elisha hath done. And it came to pass, as he was telling the king how he had restored a dead body to life, that behold, the woman, whose son he had restored to life, cried to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, My lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elisha restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed unto her a certain officer, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of the field, since the day that she left the land, even until now. And Elisha came to Damascus, and Benhadad the king of Syria was sick. And it was told him, saying, The man of God is come hither. And the king said unto Hazael, Take a present in thine hand, and go, meet the man of God, and inquire of the Lord by him, saying, Shall I recover of this disease? So Hazael went to meet him, and took a present with him, even of every good thing of Damascus, 40 camels' burden, and came and stood before him, and said, Thy son Benhadad king of Syria hath sent me to thee, saying, Shall I recover of this disease? And Elisha said unto him, Go, say unto him, Thou mayest certainly recover. Howbeit the Lord hath showed me that he shall surely die. And he settled his countenance steadfastly until he was ashamed, and the man of God wept. And Hazael said, Why weepeth my Lord? And he answered, Because I know the evil that thou wilt do unto the children of Israel. Their strongholds which thou wilt set on fire, and their young men wilt thou slay with the sword, and wilt dash their and wilt dash their children, and rip up their women with child. And Hazael said, But what? Is thy servant a dog that he should do this great thing? And Elisha answered, The Lord has shown me that thou shalt be king over Syria. So he departed from Elisha, and came to his master, who said to him, What saith Elisha to thee? And he answered, He told me that thou shouldest surely recover. And it came to pass on the morrow that he took a thick cloth, and dipped it in water, and spread it on his face, so that he died. And Hazael reigned in his stead. Wow. Ugh. Okay, so Hazael, the messenger, goes to Elisha, asking if Benhadad was going to recover. And the answer was, yes, he's not going to die of this sickness, but he is going to die. And then the prophet starts to cry and Hazael's like, What are you crying for? And he said, Because I know that you are going to kill people. You are going to murder pregnant women and children, and you're going to take down our cities. You're going to destroy Israel, and you're going to be the king instead of Benhadad. And so with this information, he goes, and here Benhadad finally he recovers from his sickness, and then he takes a wet cloth and puts it over Benhadad's face and strangles him. Wow, that's awful. So now Hazael, the ruthless king, is reigning. Verse 16. And in the 5th year of Joram the son of Ahab king of Israel, Jehoshaphat being then king of Judah, Jehoram the son of Jehoshaphat king of Judah began to reign. 32 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, as did the house of Ahab. For the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for David his servant's sake, as he promised him to give him alway a light, and to his children. In his days, Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah and made a king over themselves. So Joram went over to Zair, and all the chariots with him, and he rose by night and smote the Edomites which compassed him about, and the captains of the chariots, and the people fled into their tents. Yet Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah unto this day. Then Libnah revolted at the same time. And the rest of the acts of Joram and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Joram slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Ahaziah his son reigned in his stead. In the 12th year of Joram the son of Ahab king of Israel did Ahaziah the son of Jehoram king of Judah begin to reign. 22 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri king of Israel. And he walked in the way of the house of Ahab, and did evil in the sight of the Lord, as did the house of Ahab, for he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. And he went with Joram the son of Ahab to the war against Hazael king of Syria, and Ramoth Gilead, and the Syrians wounded Joram. And King Joram went back to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him at Ramah, when he fought against Hazael king of Syria. And Ahaziah the son of Jehoram king of Judah went down to see Joram the son of Ahab in Jezreel, because he was sick. And we'll pick the rest of the story up tomorrow. Not tomorrow. We take Fridays off, but we will pick up the rest of the story on Saturday in 2 Kings chapter 9. What are some of your takeaways today? Some things that you learned or some thoughts that you have? Let's see. I need to make sure that we're still live. Are we live? You guys haven't commented very much, but that's fine. It's just I'm not sure if you guys are still here. Looks like we've got some of you still here. So what have you learned? What are some things that you learned during these stories today? There's a lot. We covered a whole lot of ground. I think my practical takeaway is the fact that things were much worse in Jerusalem when they were surrounded by Syria. Much worse, much worse than they are here in America right now. But God was able to turn the economy around in one day, and also rescue them from their health issue. They were starving to death. But anyway, I am praying now for Scott Calder, who has been diagnosed with the coronavirus, and so praying for he and his wife, and for our community, that people that this virus would go away quickly. And I'm also praying that God would just heal our land and heal our economy and all of the things that are affected by all of this. So that's my takeaway is I trust that God is capable of rescuing us from these issues. And so I'm excited for his provision. And if he doesn't provide in the ways like he did in that story, I know that he's still good and that he's still in control. All right. Any other comments today from any of you? I'm glad you were here. And I will see you guys on Saturday then. Let's have a word of prayer. Father, thank you for your word today, and I pray that we would have faith. I pray that we would trust you, knowing that you're the God that rescued the people in 2 Kings 4-8, that you're the God who does miracles. You're the God who's over our health. Lord, you're the great physician. You're also the God who's over the economy. You own the cattle on 1,000 hills. Lord, I pray that we would just learn to trust you, to rest in you. I prayed, Lord, specifically this morning for Scott, and I pray that he would recover from the coronavirus, that there wouldn't be any lasting effects of this, and that he would recover quickly and fully. I pray for Pam as well, as she's with him, that she would be able to care for him well, but also, Lord, that she would avoid getting this virus if at all possible, that you would just help them through this. I pray, Lord, also just for our nation and for our world as we are enduring this. I pray for the Christians in this world, Lord, that you would help us to be stronger, that we would draw closer to you as a result of this. And Lord, that we would trust you during this. And Lord, we ask for your rescue soon. But in the meantime, help us to have the peace and joy of the Lord, even in the middle of this storm. Lord, I pray that you bless our Easter services coming up on Sunday, and that you would just give me skill in accomplishing the things that need to be accomplished Lord, as I study the word, that I would study it with clarity of thought. Lord, that I would study it in the Spirit of God, that I would write the words on the page, and that I would speak the words with my mouth that you want spoken and written. Lord, that they would be a blessing to our church, that they would be a blessing to the lost, Lord, and that we would see people get saved this coming Sunday as a result of the preaching and of the singing and the invitation that will be taking place. I pray that the technology would all work and function well, and Lord, that you would just be glorified through the medium of our live stream service, and Lord, that you would use us to lead many souls to Christ. I pray that you just bless our efforts, and I pray that we just give you all the glory, and that would be our intention certainly, Lord. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, church, I will see you guys on Saturday.